I was born June 3rd, 1921 in Springfield, Illinois. People were pretty poor in those days. The Depression was on, and I was born in the upstairs back bedroom of a two-story house on North Grand Avenue. I had one brother. His name was Charles Edward, and actually I didn't find out he was a half-brother until I was 21 years old. My dad was married in 1918, and that was the year they had the big flu and millions of people died. And his wife was she was 23 years old when she passed away, and he was left with a less than 1-year-old boy. So then a year later he married my mother, and they were married until both of them died. Well, the way I found out was I went down to get a birth certificate to join the Navy. And at that time, for some reason, they put firstborn on the birth certificates. And I told my mother when I went home, I said, I got to go back and change it because I was the secondborn. And she said, no, you were the firstborn. She said that they wanted me to grow up as brothers, and there was no need to tell us that we weren't brothers. You know. So I didn't find out until I went to the Navy that he was my half-brother, which didn't make any difference to me. He was probably one of the nicest guys you ever want to know. A lot nicer than me. He was 4.5 years older than me. I stayed in the same house from the time they told me I was 5 years old. I don't remember that, but they told me I was 5 years old when I moved the house, and I left when I was 21. It was a 2-bedroom, 1-bath bungalow, which there were a lot of in those days. And it was hard times. My dad was in and out of work, and everybody was kind of helping everybody in those days. And I'm sure they didn't get all the bills paid all the time, but eventually he caught up. And the house is still there, and I go by. If I go back to Springfield, I always drive by and take a look at it. I went to a elementary school, which is only about 6 blocks from the house. It was ILES school. And then I went to a high school at a place called Feichens High School. It was named after Albert T. Feichens. It's a funny name for a high school, but that was the name of it. Spent 4 years there, and then got out and went to work for a year. And by that time, the war started, and I went into the Navy. I had a lot of great friends in high school, and they're all gone now. I haven't lived them all. But we had a group of maybe 5 or 6 guys that hung out together all the time. That's about the age when you start dating, you start going to the prom and things like that. And I liked high school. I had a great time in high school. Some kids today don't seem to enjoy going to high school, but that was one of the good times of my life, going to high school. Compared to today, I'll tell you, my graduating class had 51 people in it.
Right.
And I don't know what the total complement of the school was, but it's still there too. It's not a high school anymore. It's some kind of a educational thing. My dad got me a job. Jobs were kind of hard to get at that time. It was a place called Sangamo Electric. They made electric meters, like on the back of your house, you know, and they still got them around. I still see Sangamo meters around. And I worked for them, and mostly working a drill press at the time. I was in church when Pearl Harbor happened. I was still in Springfield, and I went down to join, and my dad wouldn't sign for me. He said at the time that if he signed for me to go into the Pacific at that time, that he'd feel responsible if anything happened to me. So I had to wait for about, I don't know how many months it was, before I was 21. And then I went down and joined, and I went through flight school. I joined as a seaman apprentice. And before he recalled me, I found out I was eligible for a V5 program, which was flight training. So I went through flight training at Pensacola, Florida, came out, went to Jacksonville, Florida for about 5 months. At that time, there was a lot of German submarines going up and down the coast out there. They were sinking ships coming out of the rivers, coming out of New York, and there was big subpacks there. And so we did a lot of sub-patrol there. And then I guess somebody in the Navy decided they needed some more people out here, and I came out here, went to Camp Kearney, got checked out in the Liberator, which is the old B-24. Did some training out here, and then went overseas for a year.
And you met Nita yet?
I met her out here. I walked into a place one night called Paul's Inn, and she doesn't like to hear this story. And there were 6 of us there, I think, and she and her friend walked in the door, and I looked at her, and I thought, that's really something, you know. This is her here. And so I remember she had a big broad hat on and had 2 ribbons on the back, and I tugged on the ribbon, and I said, would you like to dance? And she said, sure.
Well, how nice is that?
So we danced a while and took her home that night and called her up a few nights later, and we were dating pretty steadily then. She was 20 and I was 23 when we met. I just thought I was dating this girl because we were on standby to go overseas, and nobody knew exactly the date we were going. And so I called her up one day, and I said, I've got the afternoon and evening off. Can we take in a movie and go dancing? She said, sure. She said, oh, wait a minute. She said, we can go down and get the license. Now, I had no idea. I knew she had I'm not talking about a fishing license or some other kind of license. And it kind of set me back, and it scared me a bit, you know.
You had never talked about marriage?
I never talked about, I was going to be a bachelor for a while at least, you know. But so I went out to see her, and she insisted we go down and get the license. So we went down to the courthouse, and it was about 4 o'clock, and we were going to get the marriage license. And all the time I'm thinking, you know, how do I get out of this, or what do I do?
Right.
So the guy came down the line. There was a big long line, a lot of people getting licensed. And he put his hand down right behind us, and he said, that's all we can take today. Now, if it had been 3 minutes later, you know, it might have been a different story. So we went back to the U.S. Grand Hotel. It was about dinner time, and I got something to eat, and she just leading me around a little bit, you know, and she said, well, I have a dentist, and he said if we decide to get married. Now, she had told the dentist about this, but she hadn't told me. She told the dentist told her, well, if you ever decide to get married, come out the house, and you do it there. So to this day, I don't remember how we got out the house. It was on the far side of Balboa Park, and I met the dentist and his wife, and they were there, and there was a municipal judge lived across the street, and I've forgotten his name now. I knew it for years. He lived across the street, so they went over and got him and brought him back, and he married us in the living room. Oh, they made Anita go upstairs and walk down the steps, and they married us in the living room there. And so we tooled out of there, went back downtown, and I said, well, what do you want to do? You know, she said, well, let's go out to La Jolla. So at that time in La Jolla, the Casa de Mañana was one of the hotels. You know. So we checked in there, and we stayed there a couple of days, and it sounds ridiculous now, but I thought, well, the rent's kind of high here. It was $14 a night, you know. And so I checked down the La Valencia, which is really a nice hotel now. At that time, it was just an ordinary hotel. I went down there and found out it was $7 a night. So I said, we're going to move.
I like
so
it.
we stayed there until I went overseas. We got married the night we got the license.
Oh.
But from the time I met her until we were married, it's 5 weeks. Oh, another funny story. I called my mother and I said, I had a bank account, but I just left all my money in the bank account back then. I think I had about $5,000 in the bank account back, which was pretty good sum out of sum back in those days. And I said, Mom, could you please go to the bank and send me $500? And I said, I'm getting married. And she said, you are? And she said, well, who is it? And I said, her name's Anita. And I said, you know, my address is Fleet Post Office, San Francisco, because we were going overseas. And so I said, send it to this address. That's Anita's address, you know, on Bancroft. Because if it goes up there, who knows how long it's going to take to get down here. And she says, I'm not sending your money to anybody I don't know. We went down to get, she said, well, we got to go down and get the rings, you know. Just tell me what we got to do. I don't know any of this stuff, you know. So we went to a place called Bernard's. I don't know if it's still here or not, down on Broadway. And she picked out 2 rings, and she said, I want to get you one too. And I said, okay, so I got a gold ring, but I had to pay for it, see. No big deal, but I thought it was funny. I'm going to buy you one with your money. To this day, I can't remember how I got from the La Valencia to the Camp Kearney, which is now Miramar. That's a pretty good jaunt, and I can't remember how I got there. It just left up here. But I was going back and forth between there, and let's see, we left, I can't remember the date we left now, about the July the 7th. So we got married on June the 21st, and I left on July the 7th. Well, from there we went to a place called Kaneohe Bay, if you know where that is. It's on the east side of Oahu. And we did 30 days of training there, and then we moved out to Enewetak, which is on the Marshall Islands. And we stayed there for several months, and then we moved up to Tinian, which is in the Mariana group, and went down to Peleliu and Palau for that invasion. And then we came back up to Tinian, and then moved up to Iwo Jima. So we moved around a little while we were up there. Nobody ever thought about dying in the war. We were just doing the job, and nobody expected to die, you know. And so we had a lot of good times with the groups overseas, and that's kind of funny to say during the war you had a good time, but we did, you know. And we developed a relationship. Well, we're going to a reunion next month with the same group of people. There's not many of them left. There's only 9 of us left now. So we've been meeting every year since, I can't remember, for the last 26 years. Once a year we go and get together. And it just, I don't know what about it there is that it seemed like people that were together in World War II were kind of bonded for life, you know. And I don't know of any other situation where people feel that way.
So you were overseas for how
long? Just short of a year. Well, let's see, I came back and I had 30 days leave. So, well, this is a kind of funny story too. We checked into Oakland, and the guy says, come back in 3 days and we'll have your orders. Well, I'm thinking I can make it down to San Diego and back, you know, in those 3 days. So I came down to pick Anita up. Now, in those days on the telephone, if you had a long distance call, they announced you have a long distance call from such and such a place by so and so person. And so I was going to call her, but I went down to operations, and there's a DC-3 turning up. They call them R4Ds in the Navy, turning up, and I said, where is he going? He said, San Diego. Well, in those days, everybody helped everybody. And I said, call him and see if he'll take me. He said, sure. So I run down, got on the airplane. I didn't have time to call Anita. Now, she's expecting a long-distance call. So I got into North Island. I put a dime in the phone and called it up. And I said, this is Bob. And she said, Bob who? And I wondered, well, how many Bobs did she know since we got married, and what do I do now, you know? She explained it very thoroughly, you know, and so she said that she was living with her folks at that time on Bancroft Street, and she said she would dye in a pair of pants. In those days, they had dye for clothes. If you didn't like the color, you dyed them something else. And she was dyeing a pair of pants, and so all of a sudden she's got to get dressed and meet me, you know. So her dad said, well, what do I do with this? He said, pour it out. So I guess she never wore whatever she was dyeing. Yeah, 30-day leave. We took the train back to Illinois. I hadn't seen my folks. I'd seen her folks all the time around here, you know. So I figured, well, I better go back and see my folks. And so we went. That's the first time she had been out of California. Now she's 20 years old, 21 by then, I guess. And she'd never been out of the state of California. I got on the train, went back to, we got off in Chicago for 3 days, spent 3 days in Chicago. We were going up to the rooftop. They had big bands in those days. And if I'm talking too much, let me know. They had big bands in those days that played to all the hotels. And we picked out this one particular band we wanted to go to. And we walked into the lobby. And I walked right in to get one of the guys from the squadron that had come back before I did. So he was from Chicago, so we had a great night. And we started hitting all the bars and going around, and things were open all night in Chicago during the war. And she was really getting pooped, and she says, well, when are we going back? And I said, whenever you get through, you know. And it was 4 o'clock in the morning, and we're still running around Chicago, you know. And she said, I got to go home. I got to go to bed, she said. So we quit that, and then we went down to Springfield, and we stayed probably, I don't know how long, 3 weeks maybe. We stayed a month, and the whole family, I had a great family, all close-knit together, and we had a great time back there. And we got on they had streetcars in those days, and we got on a streetcar one time and sat down, and this lady said, did you find her in the South Pacific? She thought she was beautiful. Another funny story. The Navy has a grading system, 0 to 4.0, okay? You get a 3.5, a 2.5 is average, like a C. And so I was writing my folks about it, and I said, you know, she's 4.0. And she went around and told everybody I was marrying a 40-year-old woman. They were all upset. And then I had to got on a train to come back out here. We were going to Oakland to get orders what I thought would be go back over. And when we got into Utah, we were driving across Utah listening to the radio, and they dropped the bomb. So by the time we got to Oakland, the war was over. I come down here, I just stayed here, and I mustered out of the Navy, but I stayed in the reserves, where you go on a weekend and do a weekend drill and go 2 weeks out of it. And I stayed in that. And then I got a job here, and we just lived here all the time. I never went back to Illinois. I went to work for the Postal Service at that time, yeah. She was working at the time, I can't remember the name of the place downtown now. It was a department store. She worked in the sports department in the department store until she got pregnant with Mike in 1950. And then she never went back to work after that. Well, we bought the first house just about a mile and a half from here over on Material Drive. We owned that for 10 years. So we stayed 10 years there, and then we moved over here, yeah.
The next child was Diana?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And what year was she born?
She was born, let's see, 52, yep.
52. And you're still over at Matera?
Still over there. Now we got to find a bigger house because we got a boy and a girl. We had 2 boys, it'd been all right, see.
Yeah,
now we got to find a bigger house. We got a boy and a girl. So we started looking, and she was busy doing something with the kids one day, taking care of the kids, I guess. And I come over and looked at this house, and I thought, this will work out good. So I went back and I tell them how terrible things were around here, like it had paint tile, and it didn't like this and didn't like that. And I'd kind of taken it down, hoping she'd accept it when she saw it, So when she came over and she says, well, what's wrong with this? I got recalled and went back in the Navy, and Lisa's the only one that wasn't born at Mercy Hospital down here. She was born at Oak Knoll Navy Hospital up in Oakland. And what I was doing at the time, we were flying to Tokyo and bringing back injured and bodies from the war over there. And we take dependents out and then come back with servicemen. I stayed a little longer than I had to because I was enjoying the flying, and got to fly for free. Actually, there was an outfit in the Air Force called SAC at that time, Strategic Air Command, and there's a general named LeMay. I don't know if you ever heard Curtis LeMay. He was a mean guy, but he got things done. He really got things done. You had to respect him for that. General LeMay he'd give an order, and he said, and he'd want a whole wing transferred from here to England or something, and you got 48 hours. Yeah, he was just unreasonable, and so we got tied up with working for the Air Force for a while there, and we got to go a lot of places around the world while we were hauling people here and there, and that was a lot of fun. I enjoyed that. nobody was shooting at us, and I got to see a lot of the world that way. Part of the time I was up there, we had Lisa. Yeah, she had her first birthday up there. Debbie was kind of unplanned. It was just, but not that we don't love her.
But,
It was a surprise. Well, that's a funny story too. I was back in Hutchinson, Kansas, instructing in patrol planes, and it was really a bad day for me. We were flying. I had 2 students, and we were instructing. And the plane captain came up. He said, "Mr. Kirk," he said, "there's sparks coming out of the left engine, you know." And I said, "Oh," so I'm looking about, and so I said, "We better head back, you know." And so we put on the coal to head back, and I didn't feather it because I didn't think it was that bad. But when I put the landing gear down, the whole wheel was on fire and the whole engine was on fire.
Oh my goodness.
So we rolled out for that, which gave me that was a bad day. The reason I'm telling this story is that I went home that day and I went in the house and Lindsay said, "I'm pregnant." That was a bad day for her, see.
That's a hell of a day.
I started pretty much at the bottom, worked my way up to the top, and when I retired, I was actually district director of customer service. I was in the district office for quite a few years. We had authority over all the post offices in this county and San Bernardino, and that's kind of funny too. The district manager was the last political appointee in that had the job here in San Diego. And when they offered me the job as district manager, not district manager, assistant district manager, I went down to see Ralph, and I said, "Well, you want to give me some guidelines, Ralph, for what you want me to do?" And he said, "Just keep us out of trouble." So I had the free rein to do what I wanted to do, as long as we went to trouble. We went to court twice. He said, it made him nervous, you know, and I knew we were battling the letter carrier union, you know, over some issues. And it was fun for me. I enjoyed it. But Anita always said, "Robert, you're a troublemaker." And whenever I was in trouble with Anita, she called me Robert. And she said, "You're a troublemaker." And I guess she was right, too, because it seemed like I stirred up a lot of trouble in my life, you know, in my work. I was lazy, I guess. I retired when I was 56 years old. And the reason I retired is because we had a district manager in Los Angeles who I just couldn't work for, you know. And they took over the San Diego district at the time, so we're all moved into the LA district. And he was just a miserable guy to work for. And I thought, you know, I can retire. Why do I have to take this crap, you know? So I retired when I was 56 years old. I stayed in the reserve, and I had a lot of fun flying in the reserve. I never got recalled after Korea. In Vietnam, I was 40 years old, and they didn't want an old man in the service at that time. So I didn't get recalled in Vietnam, but I still went on my weekends. I really enjoyed the flying I did on the weekends. And I did the 2-week duty. We went a lot of places. We even took 2-week duty in North Africa one time. And I enjoyed that very much.
Unfortunately, Nita got sick.
Yeah. She had a couple of bad 2 years, yeah. You know, she wasn't complaining about anything. She just had bad health for a couple of years. And then 8 years ago now, it's been 8 years ago in a month now, she passed away. She passed away on our 64th anniversary.
64th.
Right on the day.
Why do you think you're doing so well at 95?
I have no idea. I have no idea. I went in to see a technician the other day because they wanted to do some work on my blood, and he was looking at my records, and he said, "Oh," he said, "you're 95," and I said, "Yeah." He said, "Working on 100," and I said, "No, I'll be happy if I'm here next Thanksgiving." You know? So I don't know, you know, what's going to happen to me. Sometimes you wake up dead, you know. You know, I had a good life, and that doesn't worry me a bit, you know. I have no idea what has helped me, you know. I haven't done anything I haven't done anything to preserve my life. Let's put it that way. I have not done anything intentionally to preserve my life. It just happened, and I'm grateful. Well, I'm very fortunate, and I have a close-knit family. Everybody mothers me. Just be honest and have a good time. Don't depend on other people. Do it yourself.